Hey, the ability to return a product easily has revolutionized the e-commerce market, with customers now able to shop for a multitude of items that previously would have only been possible in stores. However, this strategy can be challenging from a logistical perspective, with some retailers estimating that over 30% of products purchased are now returned. Today on Lokad TV, we welcome Paul Bello from reverse.io, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about the role of returns in the e-commerce industry. So Paul, thanks very much for joining us today. Perhaps you could just start by just sort of telling us a little bit more about reverse.io and what you guys do there.
Thanks for inviting me. So yeah, reverse.io is a SaaS platform that manage all your reverse logistics. So we've created a platform that will basically connect all your reverse logistics stakeholders to ensure a full traceability for the customer, but also for the support team. We basically automatize all the physical and administrative flow to basically save time and money and increase customer satisfaction.
And it's all to do with kind of returns, right? And it's sort of improving that kind of ease that a customer can return a product.
Yeah, exactly. We notice that more and more with omnichannel habits, you can buy basically a product in a store and return it online and so on. And it has created a lot of challenges for retailers and pure players, and we face these issues with them.
Okay, and we're going to get on some of those challenges a little bit sort of later.
Right.
But Joannes, we're talking a bit more about sort of the role of returns. I'm going to talk about it from a sort of supply chain perspective as well. What's kind of your experience here?
I mean, first I've observed, it's like relatively well known, is that returns have literally created new markets. In the US, Zappos literally pioneered the idea that you can order shoes with multiple sizes and you just order every time you order 3 sizes and you return 2. They literally pioneered that, and they created, a multi-billion-dollar per year market of selling shoes online, which was, a decade ago considered as like impossible. People would not buy shoes online, obviously, because they can't try the sizes. Well, I guess you just have to try multiple sizes and return the rest. And Zalando in Europe also created like a multi-billion euro market for fashion out of thin air by being like extremely aggressive on the returns to a point that nowadays we notice that, by the way, in Europe, Germany has, I would say, much higher return rates than pretty much any other places in Europe, and I attribute that to basically Zalando, who has literally educated the German market to just buy more stuff and return everything that you test and you don't really appreciate. But they have also gotten very, very efficient at dealing with the returns. So returns have been literally key to unlock markets that were simply considered as not even accessible to e-commerce before.
Okay, and Paul, we sort of talk about this ability to kind of purchase multiple pairs of shoes and sort of only keep the one that really fits and send back the rest. So would you agree with that? What are kind of the main benefits of an easy returns policy?
Yeah, as you were saying, in Germany, I think that the return rate is more than 60% on the fashion. So it's huge. In France, it's 30%, as you were saying. So it's almost the double. I think, the strength of Zalando or even Amazon is to transform the return into a marketing argument. It was before just a cost. Returning a product was a cost. The cost to generate a return shipping label and to manage return in the warehouse. Now they treat them as a marketing strategy.
And is this kind of a recent shift? Is this something that's happened recently, or when did this start being kind of introduced?
Yeah, I think that we were created 10 years ago, so we really saw the evolution of the market, and we thought that since 2 or 3 years, there was a huge time to market that were created because the more and more retailers and pure players noticed that they need to figure out the reverse logistic problem and follow the Zalando or Amazon strategy if they want to maintain a certain competitive level.
Yeah, it's all about kind of keeping up with those big players, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's more a matter of how can I follow the big players and how can I make a reverse logistic as a strategic argument and marketing argument
we
to sell more.
We seem to talk about Amazon every week here, so we'll try and steer away from that. Let's sort of talk about things from maybe a kind of supply chain perspective. This idea of being able to return so many products so easily, and what kind of supply chain challenges does that introduce?
I mean, first it creates like a whole new area of uncertainty. You know, I would say the vintage s&op, you forecast demand and kind of this is it, but the reality is that you need to forecast everything that is uncertain about the future. And when you have like double-digit percentages of returns, that means that returns need to be forecasted as well. The good news is that returns are highly predictable. And so it's very interesting because first, if you see just intuitively, if you see that a client is ordering 3 pairs of shoes, the same model with 2 sizes, it's not super difficult to guess that you will have like 2/3 return rates, if not like 100% return rate, because they try the 3 pairs and they decide they don't like them and they return all of it. But you need to forecast when it's going to be returned, because that's the renewed availability of the stock. So you need to forecast if it's going to be returned and when. So you have like the double, you have those 2 dimensions. And by the way, you can leverage also all the historical data about the client, because you know it's not like you don't know anything about the client. If you have a client that is ordering, you know, a couple of times a year, and this client has a habit of returning, of being a heavy returner, then you can leverage that. And by the way, that's what we do at Lokad. So the idea is that you want to forecast demand, you want to forecast returns, not only how many returns, but exactly when they will come. Obviously, this is not something where you can, you know, predict to the final unit and the final day. So you need probabilistic forecast as well, which is not surprise. Whenever you have to deal with the laws of small numbers, you need those probabilistic forecasts. And then that lets you optimize exactly what you need to keep in stock. Because the idea is that returns, from a supply chain perspective, they act as if, you know, I would say supplies over which you have no control. You know, it's when you pass an order to your supplier, you know roughly when it's coming, and it's something that you trigger. The returns, it's not, you do not trigger them, your clients trigger them. So it's, you require, in terms of optimization, it requires a more like a hybrid modelization that take into account all those factors.
Okay, and the thing I really kind of struggle with here is the fact that sometimes you're returning a product and it might be because you don't actually like it, just a matter of taste, and sometimes you're returning it because it might be defective. I mean, from kind of your perspective, how do you kind of differentiate between those 2 kind of paths?
Return is a fact, and as you were saying, for now, a lot of retailers or pure players are not able to monitor and to gather the data of why the product was returned. We see a lot of actors that are just putting, you know, a return shipping label with a sheet of paper on the package, and basically you can just return whatever you want, but you don't gather the data of why it was returned. And this data is very important, because basically you can take this data and use it for first negotiate with your supplier, change the content on your website, for example, to warn the customer that this it's kind of, you should take a size, a higher size than expected, and so on, to basically reduce your return rate. The second thing is, so basically you have 3 kinds of returns. You have the withdrawal, so you have 15 days in Europe basically to return your product, whatever the reason. You have the defective products, so it comes and you have an issue when you receive it, it's damaged and so on. And then you have, for all technical good, which is kind of super complex, all the warranty problem that you can have on during 1 year or 2 years. And basically, our technology, reverse.io, will allow to first absorb this data, why the product was returned, and use the correct workflow to return a product to the supplier directly, or to the warehouse, or to the repair center. So it reduces the cost of a return, and it also reduces the delay refund the customer or to replace the product.
Okay, nice. It's all about that kind of efficiency. I mean, we speak a bit about returns now just being such a massive part of all sort of e-commerce. So I guess here at Lokad, it must be sort of part of a standard optimization. So how do you kind of work with it?
Absolutely. I mean, it is. I mean, whenever there is a channel where we observe returns, we need to take that into account. Otherwise, we just massively overshoot as far as stocks are concerned. But the trick is that frequently in the, I would say, classical ERPs, let's say SAP, is that returns are like complete second-class citizens. So it's very, I mean, in most, I would say, classic, I'm not absolutely sure about the last version of SAP, but basically, let's say any SAP setup that has been done a couple of years back, returns are just negative sales, which is, I would say in terms of information, it's very, very poor. So I think that's interesting that there is like players like reverse.io that enters this market, because you really need to enrich, the why, because the way we are going to work with that, for example, if there is a problem with the quality of the product, then you cannot assume that the unit that flows back is going to be back to your stock. It's a defect, it's loss. So you need to differentiate between, oh, I don't like it, to it's going to be a defect. And again, most traditional ERP, because I would say returns were a complete afterthought. You can literally see that the negative sales was just like the cheapest, dirtiest, quickest hack to get returns into the existing system. You can see the software engineer. I mean, I can project myself in looking at the software engineer, say, oh crap, we just forget about these returns. What do we do? What do we do? Nah, let's just do a negative number for the sales and be done with it. Certainly there is like no more subtleties involved. Just negative sales. That's going to be good enough. And obviously, so we have to deal with that, and obviously that complicates our life quite a lot, because then, for example, we frequently have to extrapolate a lot of things about the root cause, about the delays, because we see that the quantity is returned, but we don't necessarily have a proper, I would say, matching with who has returned what. So we know that's been returned, but is it somebody who ordered like yesterday or 3 weeks ago? Unclear. Etc., etc. So we have to deal with it pretty much every single time, and but unfortunately, I would say that the old ERPs are not necessarily that old, also not that good in terms of giving a clear picture, a crisp picture of the situation.
So is that what you've kind of observed from kind of an IT perspective? There are these real sort of challenges with integrating with ERP systems?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we talking about SAP. We were accelerated by SAP because they had some issues to manage all these. They had a lot of questions about their customers. How can I manage my returns? And they had no tools. That's why we were accelerated by SAP a few months ago to figure this challenge with them. Also, I think the main challenge is also how to revalorize a product once it's returned. As you were saying, either you can put it back in stock if the product is not damaged and so on. But there is a lot of retailers and players that are just destroying the product because it's basically more expensive to revalorize it or just refurb it or so on, just than to destroy it. So there is, in terms of ethics and also ecology, which is very important topics for now, to basically have a better management of this return, to do something with the returns.
Yeah.
And not just destroy them.
Yeah, and another sort of challenge I really see, especially in kind of the fashion industry, is a lot of the time you're forecasting for these returns based on taste and what actually people like. How easy is that to forecast for when you compare it to something like maybe a medical product, which is actually you're forecasting for something which is in need?
Actually, it's not that difficult to forecast. You see, fashion, what is very, very difficult to forecast is, the potential selling potential of a new product, because you're launching new products all the time, and that's very, very hard to assess. Now, when you're thinking about a return, you know something that is like extremely informative in terms of data is that you know that somebody purchased 1 unit this day. So it's just compare that to the fact that before launching the collection, all I have is product attributes. I know the shape of the product, the size, the fabric, the color, the price point, and all that. And all of that, you're supposed to tell whether you're going to sell, 20 units, it's going to be like a complete miss, or 20,000 units, it's going to be like a top sellers. So it's like you have like a scale of like 3 orders of magnitude of uncertainty. When it's about the returns, I mean, the scale of uncertainty is even, the most absolute best in fashion are still going to have like 10% return. And the worst, they are going to be 90%. But say it's instead of having like 3 orders of magnitude of uncertainty, you have 1, which is actually a very big difference. And then again, clients, they have habits, and you don't even need to have like that large, that much history to see that some clients are literally returning half of what they purchase. And with just 4 purchases, you can see that roughly. You're not going to be super precise. But again, I would say you still have a lot of uncertainty, but everything considered, when it comes to fashion, I would say returns are fairly predictable. A lot more than, let's say, forecasting before pre-collection what are going to be your top sellers. And by the way, if people were like super good at predicting top sellers, the fashion company who would manage to do that, they would just completely skyrocket, because if every product you were pushing to the market was the top seller in terms of fashion, you would be growing like absolutely crazy.
Okay, and let's maybe, I've been watching a lot of David Attenborough, and it's definitely a subject of importance at the minute is the environment. So from an environmental perspective, you've got all these parcels going backwards and forwards just because somebody wants to try on a few extra sizes. So can you see this willingness to carry on promoting that? Can you see that continuing over the future?
I think that return is a fact, and now it's kind of a habit for the consumer. So I'm not sure that the question is how is it will long does the return will decrease, for example, but it's more how to manage properly a return locally. And I think the real matter is how to reduce the pollution and so on a return, thanks to different initiatives. Some initiative will be, for example, in Paris or other main town, is to be able to do a home pickup of a product with a bike, for example, in a carrier-in bike, and then return the product in a local hub inside the town, and then massifying the product, and then shipping the product into the closest shop, for example, of the company, or to the closest warehouse by massifying it. So it will reduce the footprint, the ecological footprint, without reducing the number of returns. Okay. So this is kind of initiative that we can set up with different local actors that are really appreciated by retailers.
Mm-hmm. And is that a real sort of challenge from kind of a technical perspective to redistribute the stock around that network? I mean,
it's clearly complicated, but I would also point it out that it's for me, it's not very clear that having I would say an e-commerce driven economy, returns included, is naturally something that is worse than what we had before. You see, because the thing is, when you have e-commerce, it means that the last last kilometer is completely under your control. So you know exactly how much fuel you're spending to actually do this delivery to the client, and you know exactly how much fuel you need to bring it back and everything. So it's from an engineering perspective, everything is under control. Look at what is the alternative solution with, I would say, the hypermarket model. The hypermarket model is everybody takes his or her own car to drive to the store, and you can assume that people are efficient with their car. But you don't have an engineering team that is going to tell you exactly how you should be, super efficient with the way you drive your car to go to a store. I mean, the situation we have in Paris, with like being one of the most densely populated city in the world, where you have stores that are literally you can just walk to. pretty much any store. It's kind of unique, it's relatively atypical if you look at the situation worldwide. So if you think at the net impact for the planet, situations where people have to drive to get something that they want to buy is much more the norm. Paris, where you can walk to anywhere, it's very unusual. I mean, you maybe have a few dozens of cities, metropolis in the world where you can do that, but the rest is you take your car. So first, you see, it's not clear for me that you naturally have a net loss. It's just that when you take your car, companies, it does not come into the balance. Carrefour is not measuring how much fuel their customers are spending when they drive to their hypermarket. So you would say, oh, I have a very low impact in terms of ecology. Well, you don't know, because there's plenty of things that are just indirect that you don't measure. And again, I'm not blaming that for that, but I'm just saying that the situation is a lot more complex than it seems. And overall, I would have more trust in the fact that e-commerce companies who see all of that as a cost are very, very inclined in optimizing everything about it. So even if it's very difficult, it's under their control for them. It's like a vital matter of competitiveness to do something about it, because you don't even have to trust that they want to do the good thing for the planet. It's just that fuel is expensive, especially with the level of tax that we have in France for gasoline. So clearly you don't want to have drivers that just drive thousands of kilometers for nothing. It's like pure waste.
Well, we're going to have to start kind of wrapping things up now. We'll leave the last word to you, Paul. Would you say that with the way that easy returns now kind of exist, would you say that in the future there's going to be a day where we actually never need to even go to a shop at all?
I won't say that we won't need to go to the shop at all, but I think I will more say that we won't have to buy something at all, at least for a physical product, not for food and so on. But what we see in the market now is that we can lease a car, you can lease your smartphone, you can lease tomorrow your washing machine and so on. And I think this is what's going to happen in the coming years, we will stop to buy things for us, but we will more like lease the product of tomorrow, our washing machine and so on. We will use it, and if tomorrow we have a problem with it, we will have a kind of dedicated customer support that will help us. And after 3 or 4 years, we will just give back the washing machine, and we will get the new one. And
so exactly the same as we do with phones. You can sort of see that happening.
Exactly. I think it's going to be for more and more product. It was like now it's kind of popular for cars and smartphones. But I guess that tomorrow, even with clothes, there is some companies that are launching and that are basically you rent your clothes or with your I don't know, like everything that you can have in a house. I think this is really the future. And in this kind of habits, return, a good management of a return, and knowing exactly what you should do of the product when it's going to be back, thanks to a technology, it's going to be more and more necessary. It's not going to be useful, it's going to be very necessary.
Yeah, and that was something that Urban Outfitters recently released, was being able to rent your clothes in the States and return them after a month or so.
Yeah.
So who knows? Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
So that's everything for this week. Thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.